You should be grateful we still let you sit at our table." Those were the words my son's wife spoke to me in front of everyone. She didn't whisper them. She didn't even look embarrassed. She said them with a smile. And what happened next made my son go completely silent. My name is Harold Mercer. I was 67 years old, a widower, and a father who had spent most of his life believing that if you gave your children enough love, they would eventually understand its value. I was wrong. That evening, I was sitting inside one of the most expensive steakhouses in Pasadena. The private dining room glowed under soft golden lights. Crystal glasses covered the table. There were 6 of us. My son, Evan, his wife, Tessa, her mother, Vivian, and 2 other relatives who had been laughing with me just minutes earlier. I had paid for the entire dinner. I always did. Evan had been struggling financially for years, so I quietly helped. I paid part of their rent. I covered their internet. I had even kept Evan's old truck running when he couldn't afford the repairs. I never mentioned any of it, because that is what fathers do. Or at least, that is what I thought fathers were supposed to do. Then Vivian looked around the room and laughed. "This place must have cost you a fortune," she said. I smiled politely. "It's just dinner." Tessa took a sip of wine. Then she looked directly at me. "You always do this." I frowned. "Do what?" "Act like money isn't a problem." The table went quiet. Evan looked down at his plate. I felt something cold settle inside my chest. But I still tried to keep the peace. "Evan and I have an understanding," I said. Tessa laughed. "That's the problem." I looked at my son. He still wouldn't look at me. That hurt more than her words. Then Vivian leaned forward. "Since you're retired, what exactly do you do all day?" I answered honestly. "I take care of the house. I work in the garden. Sometimes I help with the baby." Tessa rolled her eyes. "Exactly." She put her glass down. "You have a big house, no real responsibilities, and money sitting around. Yet every time we need something, you act like you're doing us some huge favor." My hand stopped moving. I looked at Evan again. "Is that how you feel too?" He finally raised his eyes. And for a second, I saw the little boy he used to be. The boy who would run through my front door after school and shout, "Dad." But that boy wasn't there anymore. Evan looked away. Tessa smirked. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "Frankly, Harold, your house is the only reason anyone puts up with this." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed my napkin beside my plate. And for the first time in years, I made a decision without asking my son what he thought. I looked at him. "Evan." He swallowed. "Yes, Dad. When was the last time you paid for your own life?" His face went pale. Tessa's smile disappeared. And that was when I realized something terrible. They hadn't just forgotten what I had done for them. They had forgotten that it was ever a choice. I picked up my coat. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner," I said. Then I walked out. But I didn't go home. I drove straight to my study, opened the old leather notebook my wife had left behind, and wrote one sentence on a clean page. "This house belongs to me." I stared at those words for a long time, because I knew what I was about to do. And by the time my son discovered my plan, it would already be too late. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For years, I had woken up thinking about everyone else. Evan's bills, Tessa's requests, their baby, the house, the grocery shopping, whatever problem needed fixing next. That morning, for the first time, I opened my eyes and thought about myself. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee, and sat at the same table where my wife, Elaine, used to sit. Her chair was still there. I had never been able to move it. She had been gone for nearly 2 years, but sometimes I still caught myself turning my head to tell her something. That morning, I looked at her empty chair and whispered, "Elaine, I think I've been mistaking being needed for being loved." The words hurt, because somewhere deep down, I already knew they were true. I opened my laptop. The first thing I did wasn't call a realtor. IT wasn't even about the house. I opened my banking account. There were 3 recurring payments going to Evan and Tessa's house, their internet, their streaming services, and a monthly transfer I had never told them about. I had started that transfer after Evan lost his job. I sent them $420 every month. I had never asked what they did with it. I just sent it. My finger hovered over the screen. Then I pressed cancel. One payment, then another, then the third. No anger, no speech, no revenge. Just 3 quiet clicks. And that was when my phone rang. It was Evan. I watched his name flash across the screen. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it. Instead, I answered. Hey, Dad. His voice sounded normal. Almost too normal. Good morning. Did you get home okay last night? I leaned back in my chair. Yes. There was a pause. Then he said, about dinner. Tessa didn't mean. I stopped him. Evan, I don't want to talk about Tessa. Silence. Then what do you want to talk about? I looked through the window at the backyard. The oak tree Elaine had planted years ago was moving gently in the morning wind. I want to talk about you. He exhaled. Dad, I'm sorry. For what? For not saying anything. Those 6 words hit me harder than Tessa's insults. Because he knew. He had heard everything. And he had said nothing. I closed my eyes. Evan, you're my son. I'll always love you. Thank you. But love doesn't mean I'll keep paying for a life where I'm treated like a burden. He went quiet. Then he asked, what does that mean? I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I had one more call to make. After hanging up, I opened my contacts and found a number I hadn't used in months. Marlene Price, a real estate agent my neighbor had recommended. I dialed. She answered on the 4th ring. Mr. Mercer? Marlene, I think I'm ready. Ready for what? I looked around the house. At the photographs. At the wall where Evan's height had been marked every year until he turned 16. At the kitchen where Elaine had once baked his birthday cake. Then I said the words I never thought I would say. I want to sell my house. There was a long silence. Are you sure? I swallowed. No. I looked at Elaine's empty chair one last time. But I'm sure I can't keep living like this. Marlene agreed to come the following day. I hung up. Then I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked through the window. It was Evan. He got out alone. He walked to the front door. And just before he knocked, he looked up at the house with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Fear. I opened the door. He looked at me. Then he said, Dad, Tessa found something. My heart sank. Found what? Evan looked behind him. Then back at me. The real estate agent's card. I said nothing. He lowered his voice. And she's coming here tomorrow. That was the moment I realized my secret wasn't a secret anymore. And Tessa wasn't going to let me sell that house without a fight. Tessa didn't wait until tomorrow. She came back that same evening. I was standing in the living room when her car stopped outside. Evan was still beside me. He looked exhausted. Tessa got out, slammed the car door, and walked straight to the front door. She didn't knock. She used the key Evan had given her years ago. That little sound of the lock turning felt strangely loud. She walked in. You're selling the house? I didn't answer immediately. I looked at Evan. He looked at the floor. That told me everything. Tessa turned toward him. You knew about this? No. Then why are you here? Evan raised his head. Because he's my father. She laughed. Oh, now he's your father? Evan's face tightened. I could see the old pattern starting. Tessa would push. Evan would back down. I would step in. And everyone would pretend the problem had disappeared. Not this time. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. Tessa followed me. You can't just sell this place. I turned around. Why not? Because Evan and I live here. I stared at her. No, you don't. She blinked. What? You live in your own house. This one is mine. Her face changed. Not sadness. Not confusion. Fear. Evan's your son. I know. Then you can't do this to him. I put the glass down. You're right. She looked surprised. Then I finished. I shouldn't have been doing it to myself either. Evan looked at me. I could see something shifting inside him. Tessa wasn't finished. She's not going to let you throw us out, she said, turning toward Evan. Evan's jaw tightened. Stop. One word. Quiet. But different. Tessa stared at him. What did you say? I said stop. I had never heard my son speak to her like that. Tessa crossed her arms. Your father is manipulating you. Evan looked at me. Then at her. He has been supporting us for years. She rolled her eyes. He has money. Evan's voice became harder. That doesn't make it ours. The room went silent. I felt something break inside me. Not in a bad way. Something I had been holding together for years. The need to protect my son from every consequence. Tessa turned back to me. So what? You're just going to sell it and leave? I nodded. Yes. Where? I don't know yet. She laughed. This is ridiculous. Then her eyes moved toward the staircase. What about all of Evan's things? He can take them. And the money? I looked at her. What money? The money from the sale. There it was. The question she had been hiding behind all the others. I felt a cold calm come over me. That money has nothing to do with you. Her face turned red. You're really going to do this? I answered quietly. I already have. That night, after they left, I walked through every room of the house. I touched the wall in Evan's old bedroom. I opened the closet where his childhood trophies still sat. I stood in our bedroom and looked at Elaine's photograph. And for the first time, I understood something. Selling the house wasn't really about property. It was about stopping the past from controlling my future. The next morning, Marlene arrived. She walked through the house with a camera and a small notebook. When she reached the kitchen, she stopped. This place has history. I smiled. More than you know. She looked at me. Are you certain? I nodded. Put it on the market. She was about to answer when my phone buzzed. A message from Evan. I opened it. There were only 7 words. Dad, please don't sell until you hear this. I read it twice. Then a second message arrived. I just found out what Tessa has been hiding from you. My hand went cold. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure who had been using whom all these years. And if Evan was telling the truth, the house was about to become the least important thing I could lose. I read Evan's message again. I just found out what Tessa has been hiding from you. My first instinct was to call him. But I didn't. Something inside me said to wait. So I sent back one question. What? The typing symbol appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then his message arrived. She's been telling people the house will eventually be ours. I stared at the screen. That wasn't the shock. The shock came with the next message. She also told her mother that you were too old to manage the property yourself. I felt my chest tighten. I looked across the room at Marlene, who was still taking notes. For years, I had assumed Tessa was just entitled. Now I was beginning to wonder if she had been planning something. I called Evan. He answered immediately. Dad, come over. Right now? Yes. 20 minutes later, he walked through my front door. This time, he looked different. Not angry. Ashamed. He sat down across from me. How long have you known? I asked. I didn't. Then how did you find out? He rubbed his hands together. Last night, after you told us you were selling, Tessa called her mother. And? I heard them talking. He paused. They were talking about your house like it was already theirs. I said nothing. Her mother asked how much she thought you'd get. My stomach turned. What did Tessa say? Evan looked down. She said you'd probably leave us the house. I let out a quiet breath. Probably? That's what she said. Then Evan reached into his pocket. He pulled out his phone. There's more. He played a recording. I heard Tessa's voice. Then Vivian's. The conversation wasn't long. But one sentence made my hands go numb. Once he's gone, Evan will have no choice but to sell it or live there. Either way, we win. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because I was angry. Because I was grieving. I had spent years thinking I was building a safety net for my family. They had been looking at it as an inheritance. Evan turned off the phone. Dad, I'm sorry. I looked at him. You didn't say it. I should have stopped her. Yes. He flinched. I didn't take it back. Sometimes love requires the truth more than comfort. You should have, I said. His eyes filled with tears. I was scared. Of her. He nodded. Of losing my marriage. I leaned back. And you were willing to lose your father instead? He couldn't answer. That silence was answer enough. After a few moments, he stood. I'll talk to her. No. He stopped. I don't want you to fight her for me. Then what do you want? I looked at the house around us. I want you to decide what kind of man you are when nobody is telling you what to do. He nodded slowly. Then he walked out. Marlene had heard enough to understand that something serious was happening. She didn't ask questions. She simply handed me a document. If you're still certain, we can list the property tomorrow. I signed. My hand didn't shake. That afternoon, the for sale sign went into the front yard. I stood behind the window and watched it happen. And then my phone rang. It was Tessa. I almost didn't answer. But I did. She didn't say hello. She said, "You have no idea what you've just done." I looked at the sign outside. Actually, Tessa. I took a breath. I think for the first time I do. There was silence. Then she whispered something that made my heart stop. If you sell that house, Evan will never forgive you. I closed my eyes, because I knew something she didn't. Evan wasn't the one I was afraid of losing anymore. I was afraid of losing myself again. And that night, Tessa made one last move. A move so bold that even I didn't see it coming. I thought Tessa's phone call was the worst thing that would happen that night. I was wrong. At 6:17 the next morning, someone banged on my front door. I walked downstairs, still half asleep. When I opened it, Evan was standing there. His face was pale. "Dad, you need to come with me." "What happened?" He looked past me into the house. "Where's Tessa?" I frowned. "Isn't she at home?" He shook his head. "She left." "Left where?" "I don't know." Then he handed me his phone. There was a message from Tessa. "If your father wants to destroy our family, let him." I'm done. I read it twice. When did she send this? About an hour ago. I looked at Evan. "Did you two fight?" He nodded. "About the house. About everything." He sat down on the edge of the sofa. "I told her she couldn't keep expecting you to pay for everything." His voice cracked. "She said you were using money to control me." I sat opposite him. "And what did you say?" I told her she was wrong. That was the first time I saw my son choose a side. Not my side. Not his wife's side. The truth's side. But then he said something that made me sit forward. "She took the baby." My heart dropped. "Where?" "I don't know. Evan. I swear, Dad. I don't know." He looked like a man who had just watched his entire life come apart. I put my hand on his shoulder. "We'll find them." He looked at me. "Why are you still helping me?" The question hurt. "Because you're my son." "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything." He looked down. Tears rolled down his face. "I don't deserve you." I shook my head. "Don't say that. It's true." "No. You made mistakes." "That's different." For the first time in years, I pulled my son into a hug. He held on to me like he was a child again. And I realized something. I had been so focused on protecting myself that I hadn't noticed how lost my son had become. But our moment didn't last. My phone rang. It was Marlene. "Mr. Mercer, we have a problem." I stood up. "What kind of problem?" "A buyer wants to see the house today." "That's not a problem." She hesitated. "The buyer is already here." I walked to the window. A black SUV was parked across the street. "Who is it?" "That's the problem," Marlene said. "They didn't come through my office." My stomach tightened. "Then how did they know about the house?" "I don't know." I looked at Evan. He had heard everything. "Dad." The SUV's door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He walked toward my front gate. Then he stopped. He looked directly at my window and raised his phone. A moment later, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice said, "Mr. Mercer, I'm calling about your property." "Who are you?" "Let's just say I'm someone who knows exactly how much your house is worth." I looked at Evan. The man continued. "And I also know your son's family has nowhere else to go." My blood ran cold. "What do you want?" He laughed quietly. "I want to make you an offer. Then talk to my realtor." "I will." He paused. "But first, you should know something." I waited. "Your daughter-in-law contacted me before the house was ever listed." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Why?" His answer was so quiet I almost missed it. "Because she was trying to sell something that didn't belong to her." The call ended. I stood completely still. Evan looked at me. "What did he say?" I didn't answer. Because for the first time, I realized this wasn't just a family argument. Someone had been planning around my house long before I decided to sell it. And now I had to find out exactly how far Tessa had gone. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the strange buyer. Not even because Tessa had disappeared with the baby. It was the sentence that kept replaying in my head. She was trying to sell something that didn't belong to her. At 2:13 in the morning, I finally got out of bed. I walked into my study and opened the old file cabinet where I kept every important document. The deed, the tax records, the insurance papers, everything. I pulled out the property file. The house was entirely in my name. There was no joint ownership, no trust, no agreement giving Evan or Tessa any claim to it. Then I found something I hadn't seen in years. A small manila envelope. My wife's handwriting was on the front. "For Harold, when you're ready." My hand started shaking. I had forgotten about it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Elaine had written it months before she died. I sat down and read. She hadn't written about money. She hadn't written about the house. She had written about Evan. She said she was worried that one day I would give so much of myself to our son that I would forget how to live my own life. Then she wrote one line that broke me. Harold, loving our child does not mean handing him the keys to your life. I pressed the letter against my chest. For the first time since her death, I cried without trying to stop myself. I cried for her, for Evan, and for the man I had become. A man who had spent years calling sacrifice love. My phone rang. It was Evan. Dad, I found Tessa. I stood up. Where? Her mother's house. Is the baby okay? Yes. Relief flooded through me. Then Evan's voice changed. But Dad, there's something else. What? Tessa admitted she contacted that buyer. I closed my eyes. Why? Because she thought you would eventually sell. And she wanted to know how much you would take. I said nothing. Evan continued. She also told him something else. What? She said you were getting too old to handle the property. My jaw tightened. Did she say that? Yes. Then he whispered. Dad. She tried to make him think I had authority to negotiate for the house. I couldn't believe it. Did he believe her? I don't know. A moment later, there was a knock at my door. I looked toward the hallway. Evan, someone's here. Don't open it. The knock came again. This time, IT was louder. I walked to the front door. I looked through the glass. The man from the SUV was standing on my porch, and beside him was Marlene. I opened the door. The man held up a folder. Mr. Mercer, we need to talk. I looked at Marlene. She nodded. He brought documents. The man handed me the folder. I opened it. Inside was a copy of an offer for my house. But the buyer's name wasn't the strange part. The price was. It was far below the house's actual value. I looked up. You expect me to accept this? No. He paused. We expect you to understand why it was offered. I felt a cold sensation run through me. Why? He pointed to the last page. There was a signature. Not mine. Not Evan's. Not even Tessa's. It was someone else's. Someone who had no legal right to sign anything. I stared at the name. Then I looked at Marlene. Who is this? She didn't answer. The man did. That's exactly what you need to find out. I looked down at the document again. Because I knew that name. And if I was right, the person who signed that paper had been inside my house many times. The day I sold the house, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. The buyers were a young couple expecting their first child. They walked through the rooms with the same excited nervousness I remembered from when Elaine and I first bought the place. I watched them laugh in the kitchen. I watched the young man open the back door and look at the oak tree. And for a moment, I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake. Then I remembered that I hadn't sold a home. I had sold the place where I had spent years forgetting that my life was still mine. 5 days after the listing went live, the sale was final. I packed what mattered. Elaine's photographs, a few clothes, her old recipe book, my leather notebook, and one small box of Evan's childhood memories. I left the rest behind. That evening, I slept on an air mattress in an empty bedroom. The house was quiet. For the first time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom. The next morning, I picked up my new home. A used motorhome. 34 feet long. Small kitchen. Real bed. And enough windows to make the road feel like an open door. I drove west. No destination. No schedule. Just road. That night, I parked near the coast. I sat outside with a cup of coffee and watched the sun disappear into the water. I thought about Elaine. I thought about Evan. I thought about every time I had said yes when I wanted to say no. And then my phone rang. Evan. I answered. His face appeared on the screen. He looked tired. Older. Behind him stood Tessa. She looked furious. You sold the house, she said. I nodded. Yes. You cut us off. I stopped paying your bills. You threw our things out. I returned what belonged to you. She stared at me. Do you even consider yourself part of this family anymore? That question hurt. More than I expected. I looked at Evan. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. I turned my phone toward the ocean. The Pacific stretched across the screen. Look at that, I said. Tessa laughed bitterly. What does that have to do with anything? Everything. I turned the camera back. For years, I thought family meant making myself small so everyone else could stay comfortable. I paused. IT doesn't. Evan's eyes filled with tears. Tessa opened her mouth. I stopped her. You asked if I'm still part of the family. I looked directly at my son. I'm your father, Evan. That will never change. Then I looked at Tessa. But being your father doesn't mean I'm required to finance a life that doesn't respect me. She went silent. Evan finally spoke. Dad, I understand. I felt my throat tighten. Do you? He nodded. For the first time, I do. Then he said something that broke through every wall I had built. Dad, I'm sorry I let you believe you had to buy my love. I couldn't answer. Because that was the one thing I had never wanted to hear from my son. The call ended a few minutes later. I sat there in the dark. And for the first time since Elaine died, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Hope. But the next morning, Evan sent me a message. Only one sentence. Dad, I need to see you without Tessa. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. There's something I should have told you years ago. My heart started pounding. Because I knew that whatever he was about to tell me, it could change the way I saw my son forever. I met Evan 3 days later. He drove alone. No Tessa. No argument. No excuses. Just my son. He parked beside my motorhome and sat there for almost a minute before getting out. When he opened the door, he looked like the boy who used to wait for me after school. Only now, he was a grown man who had finally realized how much he had lost. Hey Dad. Hey son. He sat across from me. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he looked down. I owe you the truth. I nodded. Then tell me. He took a deep breath. I knew Tessa wanted the house. I felt my chest tighten. How long? Almost a year. I closed my eyes. That one confession hurt more than anything Tessa had ever said. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. Of what? Of losing her. I looked at him. And you were willing to lose me? Tears filled his eyes. I didn't think I was losing you. I shook my head. That's the problem, Evan. He wiped his face. I thought you'd always be there. I looked out the window. Fathers sometimes make that mistake too. He looked confused. What mistake? We teach our children that home will always have the light on for them. I turned back to him. But we forget to teach them that sometimes they have to knock. He started crying. I did too. There was no anger left. Only two people finally admitting how much they had hurt each other. Then Evan reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small envelope. What's this? It's something I found in Mom's old things. My heart stopped. I opened it. Inside was a photograph of Elaine, Evan, and me. Evan was about 10 years old. We were standing in front of the house. On the back, Elaine had written, "This is what matters. Not the house. Not the money. Them." I couldn't hold back the tears. Evan leaned forward. Dad, I don't want your house. I looked at him. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? He answered without hesitation. My father back. Those words broke something open inside me. I reached across the table. He took my hand. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a wallet. I felt like his dad. Tessa and Evan eventually separated. It wasn't because I destroyed their marriage. The truth did that. Evan finally learned that peace isn't the same as silence. And Tessa learned that a family's love cannot be treated like an ATM. As for me, I kept traveling. I visited small towns. I sat by lakes. I met people I would never have met if I had stayed inside that house. And every few weeks, Evan came to visit. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we just sat quietly. But the silence between us was different now. It wasn't filled with things we were afraid to say. It was peace. One evening, Evan stood beside the ocean with me. He looked at the water. Dad. Yeah. Do you ever regret selling the house? I smiled. Every once in a while. He looked surprised. Really? Yes. I looked at the sunset. But I don't regret learning that a home isn't a building. I put my hand on his shoulder. It's where you can finally be yourself without fear. Evan nodded. Then he hugged me. And as I held my son, I thought about that dinner. The night Tessa told me I should be grateful, they still let me sit at their table. She thought she was taking my dignity away. She wasn't. She was giving me the courage to take it back. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to destroy anyone. I only needed to stop abandoning myself. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a parent can do is stop rescuing their child from the consequences of their own choices. And sometimes walking away isn't the end of a family. It's the first chance that family has ever had to become honest. I looked at Evan one last time. Ready to go home? He smiled. Where? I pointed toward the motorhome. Wherever the road takes us. And this time, he walked beside me. Not behind me. Not in front of me. Beside me. Sometimes, loving your family means knowing when to stop sacrificing yourself. Helping the people you love is a beautiful thing, but love should never mean allowing someone to disrespect, use, or control you. Harold learned that he could love his son without paying for every mistake he made. He didn't choose revenge. He chose dignity, boundaries, and a second chance at his own life. Because sometimes, walking away isn't about abandoning the people you love. It's about finally remembering that you deserve love and respect too. If Harold's story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional family stories about betrayal, love, justice, and second chances. And now I want to hear from you. If you were in Harold's place, would you have sold the house and walked away, or would you have given your family one more chance? Tell me your answer in the comments below. And if you've ever had to set a hard boundary with someone you love, share your story with us. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing.